Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This week we're back with a new hard industrial techno tutorial, and this one is on Ikkhi. We're gonna go through all of the elements that you've heard in the preview. You can also grab the product file in the link in the description if you want to follow along. And thank you so much already if you like this kind of content for liking, subscribing and commenting the channel. And here we go.
Let me see your best.
Okay, so for this track I've been referencing with a few tracks from Ikkhi, especially his remix from Dimension 9 and also his track Push the Ignition. So the kick is very inspired from the remix and we're gonna go through it. As usual, I'm gonna have a few layers on this one. So this one is the kick without any mixing. At first I had these full layers, so I had some texture, punch kick, some mid layers and the offbeats. So as usual with the hard industrial techno kicks, it's better to see first the group processing because it's the most important part, especially to get the distortion and the grit from this kind of kick. So on my group I have this saturation that plays a huge role. You see, it really makes the whole sound. And what's special about this one, so I'm using the medium curve saturator. What's special is the color curve here, especially highlighting these mid frequencies. So without it, you see, you kind of make it breathe and it's better with that setting. I also use a bit of amp. So these are maybe just to make resonate a bit more the bass, also the highs. So with the blues and the bass with this one. And then make sure I limit a bit just to push a bit the volume, a few EQs, and that's pretty much it for the group processing. So inside of it, I have several layers. I'm gonna go through first the punch, which is the main layer. So I have the main punch, it's just a clubby sample from Vengeance. I add a bit of distortion, this setting called solder. And what's important here is really this EQ. So especially when I put lots of distortion on the group after, it really makes resonate usually that frequency range. So after or before your distortion, it's better to cut through this EQ. You see it really withdraw that resonancy. I then have a few top kicks. So this one, it's just a top kick like this. You can get it for free actually from Raveyard sound. This one is from TKNVLT. So this one is a bit more, it's bigger. So it's a kind of perk that's already distorted. Then I'm adding already some room with the convolution reverb. So all of this together, give me something. So I have the punch with the low mid and also the punch in the mid and the highs. So this is my punch. Next, I'm gonna go through the rumble. So for this rumble, I've used 3 layers. So the main layer is actually coming from this kick. So it's a free kick from TKNVLT. And I'm just applying a bit of distortion, so it's the same setting as my main kick, main punch, and then just 100% convolution reverb. I then put this rumble inside my group, so there it is. And I'm sidechaining, of course. The sidechain is pretty sharp on this one. And I'm actually using it after the same rumble, but this one I'm gonna distort it, so it's like parallel processing. So this one is more distorted, this one is more airy, more reverby. You see it adds a bit of that frequency here, and here it's really more in the bass and some distortion. So I'm using same first chain as this one, it's just that I'm adding this saturation in medium curve, and then I'm again EQing. And what's important in that EQ is really this cut. You see it really resonates, and it's the same as the punch. So really be careful when you're adding lots of distortion. You usually have some resonances between 100 and 200 Hertz. So it's a good place to look for when EQing. And then I'm just adding another bassy but more groovy with that 16 pattern. So it's just a kick. It's the same kick as this one. And then it's just a 16th pattern. Again, the EQ like this, and sidechaining. So it adds a little bit of movement, and so all of this together, it's the rumble. I'm just redrawing that resonancy here. So together, I have my punch and my rumble. Already pretty heavy. And then I'm adding some texture layers. So for this, just use if you have some full kicks, and it's just about EQing. So I'm isolating the mid frequencies, so it's really just to put some texture and grit and to fill up the mid frequencies. And so I'm using 2 samples, and this one it's pitched down actually. So you see it's really heavy. And at first it was a bit quicker, and it was a full kick. And so these 2 layers, so it really adds that grit in the mid-range. And also what makes the kick go quick is that this sample was actually like a reverse kick here. So it kind of makes the punch, you see it enhances the punch because it goes reverse, and you can actually make the same. So you see this pattern of having so the fact of having a reverse sample is really like speeding up the end of the kick, and it makes the next punch with more transient and more punchy. So it's a good way to make that kind of effect. And finally, I just have a bit more texture. So this one is more like reverby, just some random perks. So you see I have some snares, some perk, and some punch. And I'm just sidechaining, putting convolution, reverb, all of this together. It makes this. So it's to add a bit more room to the kick. And so after this, I have rendered it to audio, and then I put it in my channel here. This is my kick channel, and I'm just mixing up the kick a bit more. It's less resonating. So as you can see, I've added, of course, my inflator, kind of excite a bit the harmonics, a bit of amp also, and then it's just about EQing. So you see the difference. I had lots of resonances here, more in the mid-range, and so I had to EQ this, and then after just boosting up back that mid frequencies, and also the punch because I lost it a bit in the process, and it's way more clean. I also use this plugin, which is D-Res. So I kind of just bought this for the Black Friday, and I think it's a good plugin because it does the same thing as SUS2, the famous plugin, but it's way less expensive. Like I got it for $10, and SUS2 is like $200 or something like this. So it just highlights the resonances and withdraw them. So you see, it kind of highlights here some resonancy, and then you can just use it. If you want to highlight the resonances, then put them down manually with the EQ. It's just that sometimes it takes so much time to just find the resonances and withdraw all of them, especially when you have lots of saturation. So it's a good tool to use, especially for mixing. So this is my kick, and just on top of that kick, I'm just again adding a bit more texture or reverb or room. It's just slight. So it's to have a bit more movement, and then it's the same thing as my texture in my kick group here. So it's just a few samples. So I'm using like this perk. but I'm just sidechaining with this, and I'm also sidechaining with this. So I'm really taking like just this space, and then amp groove to make something moving. This one is actually coming from this, so it's just that kick low that is soloed, and it's just that beatbox kit. And I just took like a part of it, the audio, and then just adding again sidechain, reverb. Something moving like this. Also this. And this one is more grit, more noise. And together with the kick. So it adds a bit more movement, and that's it for my kick. So after that, at some point in the track, I'm adding like a hardcore snare on top of the kick. So this is this one. So it's just to enhance a bit more the kick, and I think Ikkhi is using sometimes these kind of snares. So to do these snares, I've already shown you like in other videos, but really like take any kick. If it's already distorted, it's even better. And just put some saturation and an EQ like this that you want to make a bit more resonate in the mids, depending on where you want it to punch. And then just another saturation and another EQ, and you get this kind of snare. So at first it was a kick. Like this, and so you can make resonate, for instance here if you would prefer. And you can make this kind of a hardcore snares. Also I have this perk loop, and again it's to add a bit more room and movement to the kick. And so to do this, I'm using like a random pattern and different velocity here, some random perk, and then I'm just using this tool. It's from Audio React. I use it a lot when I want to do this perk loop. It's very useful. So it's just actually a rack with some flanger, delay, reverb, and it makes something moving. It's pretty good. Then I'm redrawing this resonancy and sidechaining and clipping, and yeah, that's it. So that's it for all of the elements related to the kick. So then I have some drums. So the main drum is of course the open hat. So this one is really like pretty industrial. What I do to do this kind of open hat is really you take a sample. So if it's already noisy, it's even better. It's more simple to do the work, but then you just have to distort it a lot with overdrive and manage the compression, gluing together with the drum bus, and then after I put reverb for the room, sidechain, and then it's lots of EQs. So I have quite a lot here. Also my D-Res, because when you do lots of overdrive like this, of course you get some resonances, so you gotta be careful. And here I wanted something very sharp in the high end, because I'm gonna have lots of other elements in that mid-range. So here it's really taking some time to understand where the resonances are and withdrawing them. But usually you have them at 1K, 4K, and 10K. That's like the most common resonances. So the pattern was simple here. On top of that, I have also some shakers. So it's almost some hi-hat. So you take a random hi-hat loop. Again, distortion, EQing, putting some room and delay and reverb, sidechain, and that's pretty much it. And here a bit of groove in the pattern here with the velocity. And I have another hi-hat. So I have two different samples to get more groove. This one, again with some velocity patterns, and this one. I think it's the same, it's just that I have two samples so that the sound is more full. And so it's different, yeah, just different samples, but I have the same like EQ, delay, and sidechain, and eventually reverb here. And that's pretty much it for my drums. I then have also a perk loop. So for this perk loop, I'm using again that groove delay, which is very effective to get some ghost notes. And then it's just chopping up. So at first it was just a perk loop, but I took only the part that I wanted and I made my own groove and pattern with it. And it makes... It's pretty effective. And yeah, that's it for the perk loop. So it's just this perk loop. Sometimes I use it fully like this, and at the drop here, I'm only like doing colon answers with the different elements. So I'm gonna have my bass, morph, wavetable, then the screech, then this kind of perk loop, also the snares. So it's all colon answer, and then I'm putting it back in full mode at the end. So then just have my vocal. So Ikkhi uses lots of vocal. So using like chopped up vocal. So you can make this kind of effect just by splitting the vocal in 16ths or 8ths or 4ths or whatever. And then just adding some distortion, because at first it was like some very raw voice. So you want to make it nasty, some amp. So use any mode full on and you're going to get something more industrial. And then just the same room as the other elements. And yeah, just managing also the BPM of the vocal so that it matches the BPM of the track. So after that, I'm going to have lots of elements that are popping in the track. So I think Ikkhi uses some kind of glitches or weird sounds sometimes. So what I did is I use a few screech at some point and then some other glitches. So some glitches to make the transitions like this. But also some glitches to be more like with a pattern, same as a perk loop. And I'm using also this kind of colon answer with those glitches. So like this. So for all of these elements, I'm using samples. So either a screech sample here or some glitches. For all of these elements, I'm using the same processing. So basically I have my room, the reverb, the delay sometimes, other reverb here just for the screech, my D-res and some EQ and clipping for the screech. One interesting thing here is that for this glitch, I make a variation thanks to this auto filter. So when it's playing, it's going to change because I have this LFO that is moving. So this frequency is going to move like this. So you see it's a good way to have some variation and something moving. So to make this kind of glitch, so either you have some plugins like Glitch 2. This kind of plugin is just like adding a ton of different effects on some samples, on some loops and sequences, and recording it and then chopping up the different samples to get some glitches. Or you can just do it yourself by recording and adding multiple effects. It's just way longer to do so. So after my glitch, I have the lead for my drop here. So this is basically some wavetables. So I'm just using like some long bars. I have some distortion, a lot with the amp and the trash, and then my reverb. And then it's just making move the wavetable in Serum. So to make this kind of wavetable, you can use like any kind of wavetable. You can use, for instance, the spectral monsters. It's usually very effective, but this time I got another one. And here I'm just moving the position here of the wavetable with the time. So there are actually lots of parameters moving. So I have this LFO that is moving in 2 bars. It may move the position of the wavetable. It may move the cutoff of the filter. And also I can add some FM synthesis with another oscillator if I want. I also have lots of different effects. I have this EQ moving and I have this LFO to move the distortion. Starting a bit more nasty. And yeah, just playing like long notes, different octave. And I have this other one, and this one is just a random synth. So I really like take any synth sample and just add a ton of distortion with the amp in rock mode, for instance. And then you just get this kind of strange bassy sounds. And yeah, I've studied using it with some call and answer also, again, different points in the track. I have also a few random elements here, it's just some noise. So to do that, I'm using a snare that's already noisy, but I make it even more noisy with the pedal. So it's just some noise, lots of delay, reverb, and the autopan to make the stutter effect. And again, I take the first part without the stutter effect, and then I have it for the tail, and then sidechaining, and I have another one here, but it's shorter. So it's just to add a few elements in the background, a bit of noise, so it's really like industrial feeling. Nothing special here. So I'm just using another sample, another snare that I transposed a bit, and that's pretty much it. And finally, I have my breakdown. So for the breakdown, I have two of them. The first one is introduced by an impact and the kick with some reverb. So I start like this, and then I bring different elements slowly with the auto filter. So I have first this bassy drone. So it's a kind of reese bass, but it's just that I took like a tail of a random kick, a reverse bass kick. And what's interesting here is that with the sampler, I can put the sustain mode like this. So it's just gonna play like indefinitely like this. So I get something different from just a reese bass, normal reese bass. So that's why I did this. I can also add some movement with the auto filter. So with this LFO, you see it's moving like this. Just sidechaining with that first impact. So I bring that element. I'm also bringing some snares. So at first it's some normal snares, and then I have also this kind of hardcore kick. So it's a first climax that I have at the end of this long sweep. Also Ikkhi uses lots of these long sweep along in the track, so that's why I use them. These really like EDM kind of sweeps. So I have my first climax, then I bring the vocal, and then another new bar to bring up the intensity. So this time I start directly with the filter full on opened, so it's different from the first bar. And this time I'm adding even more sweeps to have more intensity. So instead of having that bass, this time I have a noisy drone. So I took like a random impact and same technique. So you use the sampler with the sustain mode, add some distortion, add some movement with the auto filter and the LFO, and then it's just bringing up the filter like this. You see, it really brings that grit. So you see it's just some noise, but you get lots of grit from the amp in rogue mode. And so all of this together is going up, the different sweeps, also the different snares with the different patterns. And finally, I have these glitches before the drop and the vocal, and then boom, the drop. So it's the glitches that we saw here. Call, answer. And the impact at the drop. So this is the first breakdown, and I have another one again. So I kind of tell to the audience that it's the break. So already with that kind of, I withdraw the kick, I do some different patterns. I also use the glitches, the sweeps, and the impact at the drop, plus the kick with the reverb. So it tells, okay, this is the breakdown. And then I want to make a pretty quick breakdown here. So I'm bringing quite quickly again the snares and the vocal, the drone, the reese bass. So So yeah, what brings the intensity in those breakdowns is really like adding different layers of different sounds that kind of add up. The tension and intensity is going up with the filters going up also. Then boom, you have either like a vocal or pause without any noise, and then boom the drop, and it's always very effective. So I guess that's it for this track, guys. Again, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I see you in the next one.